All right, so here's the issue. Let's say we want to make some changes to our website. How can we do that in an efficient way? Well, I'm going to teach you all those steps, but speaking of changes, we've made some changes here live on the server, right? Like we went into the different files here and we were editing like the settings and different things. Now, personally, I don't recommend this because if we go to our little console here and I'm going to move back to the top of the project. If I do a get status, you can notice, well, there's all sorts of different things that I've changed up here. And these have to now be added into Git, and I'm going to have to push this up to GitHub and then on my local computer, pull those down. I really recommend the flow of make your changes in your development on your local machine, push those up to GitHub, pull them back down on the server, and then just have those. And anytime you want to make changes, do it locally in that flow, or else you're going to have to do this little kind of weird tweak that we have right now. And the other part that goes along with this is that you'll notice there's lots of files being added in this, or there's lots of changes that have been made, and some of them are for files that we know nothing about. So anytime you see this PyCache, these are files that are automatically created by Django when your server is being run, and it's not what we want. The other thing is, like, for example, we don't want to move the static folder up and down. Like, we already have the static files inside of the apps, like this top level static folder. We don't need this, and so, how do we fix that? Well, let's go ahead and talk about something called gitignore. So let's go ahead and go to gitignore.io. And a gitignore file is a file that you can add to your Git projects that says, hey, don't upload and download or track changes on these particular files or folders. It's really helpful. So for example, this website just helps you to create a gitignore file simply. So for example, if I search Django here and hit enter and create, it gives me this file that's going to have a lot of great info. Now, I don't think it's really worth grabbing all these different pieces here. To me, the most important stuff is what's right here at the top. This one that has it gets rid of those PyCache folders and any of these .pyc files, stuff like that. You'll also notice though, is it has stuff like it's trying to not move our media. It's trying to not move the db.sqlite3. Now, this is important if you are not trying to move your database up and down. So for example, usually you have a development server, which is like your SQLite3, and then you have like the Postgres database live up on your server. And it's like that server's database is the truth. That is the stuff that should not be changed, always focused on that. But in our case, we're the only ones that have access to the database, and we're just using the SQLite3, so we're moving it up and down. So we don't want that included. Same thing with our media files, because we don't want those going up and down. So basically what I want you to do is I want you to copy from local settings, we're going to talk about that later, all the way up to this star.log. Just copy these 5 lines. I'm going to copy this, come back to our console, and let's do a nano space .gitignore. Okay, so this is going to be us creating a new file. The reason we're not doing this in this fancy editor is I'm not sure we can create a .gitignore file. It's really important that it's .gitignore. Okay, and make sure that you're creating this. If you ever need to exit out of Nano is a text editor in the terminal. If you do a Control X, you can go back out, but make sure you're in like the same folder that has like manage.py, okay? Because this is the same place that has our .git folder. Like if I do a cd.git, you can see it auto-completes for me because that's where we are. All right, so again, nano.gitignore. Okay, I'm going to paste in the lines that we had before, but I'm also going to add a /static/. So this is basically saying I don't want to move that folder that has all the static files that we compiled into there. So once I've done this, I'm just going to do a Control X. It's going to say, do you want to save this? I'm going to type Y and then hit enter. Okay. So now that I've done that, if I go ahead and do a git status, you'll notice that not everything is showing up. So for example, that static file or that static folder is gone. You'll notice we still have some issues here that the .pyc is still there and whatnot. And so the reason for this is that we need to make sure that we commit at least the gitignore, and then we can see all of these things come through. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say add and then just .gitignore, okay? Or I need to do git space add .gitignore, okay? So now if we do a git status, you'll notice that in green is the .gitignore. It's saying this is ready to be committed. So if I just want to commit this one file, which I do, I'm going to say git commit -m, and I'm going to add a message here that says added a gitignore, and I'm going to hit enter there. Oh, I have to specify who I am. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to copy these lines here. So I'm going to specify my email, nick@zappycode.com. Okay, and then I'm also going to do a name. Let's just do Nick. So now let's try doing that commit one more time. Okay, that does that. So now if I do a git status, oh, I was supposed to get rid of those. All right, so I found what the issue is. I thought this could be a fun learning opportunity to see how I got to the answer of this. So I Googled .gitignore, not ignoring file, which led me to the Stack Overflow post, God bless Stack Overflow, and found that this answer basically said, you know, these things were already added to your system, so you essentially have to acknowledge that they're going to be deleted. So the way that you can do this is copy this git rm-r-cache dot. So go ahead and go to your console, paste that in, okay, and then do this git add dot, okay, and then it adds everything back. So now if we do a git status, it shows us, okay, these are the ones that are modified, which they should be the settings and the database, but then all these other ones, these, you know, just kind of temporary files that Django made that we don't need, it needs to delete those because these were actually created even before we moved them up to the server. Once we ran them on the server, they were changed. Anyways, this is going to get rid of all of those. So with this in place, we're going to go ahead and do our git, because this has already been added from what we just did. In fact, that's kind of a cool tip. Instead of doing the git add dash capital A, you can do the git add dot. But I'm going to go ahead and say git commit -m. I'm going to say remove old stuff. Okay, so we'll go ahead and commit that. So now if we do a git status, we'll notice that it's all clean, but it says you're ahead of origin/master, meaning we've made 2 commits that aren't up on GitHub. So we've got to fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a git push origin. So this is going to push it up to GitHub. Okay. And now we have to specify our username and password for GitHub. And once we've done that, that will push all of our changes there. So once that's in place, we need to go back on our own computer's terminal. So I'm going to open up the local terminal here on my computer. I'm going to move into my project if you've moved out of it. So I'm going to get into my personal portfolio project. There we go. And I'm going to do a git status. You got to make sure that you don't have any changes here. If you do, you either need to delete them, or you can do this thing called git stash to get rid of them. But anyways, we don't have any changes there, but make sure it's clean here. And we're going to do a git pull origin. Okay. And this is going to pull down all the changes that we just made so that these are now local in our own project. Okay. So we should see if we open up, for example, Atom here, and we go inside of our settings, we should see that, for example, debug is equal to false. So this proves, and there's the Python anywhere, that we got our changes down our computer. Okay. So now if you have this, I'm going to show you in the next lecture how to properly, whenever you have changes, have them go live on your project.